Let's get started. Chapter 13 focuses on submediant chords and mediant chords, the 6 chords and the 3 chords. These are used less frequently than the primary chords. The primary chords are the 1, 4, 5 chords. Up until this point, the majority of the chords that we've worked on are primary chords, but last chapter was a 6-4 chord, which is more of an embellishing situation, and the chapter before that was 2 chords, which was a substitution for 4. And these chords I think of more as filler. They can elongate phrases. So what we're really going to focus on with these chords is how they fit into chord progressions. All right, let's look at the examples here. All right, the 6th chord is a tonic function. It's a substitution for 1, but it doesn't establish the key the same way. So you treat it similarly, but know that it doesn't replace the 1. It's a substitution for it. Okay, so what I've written down here is how the 6th chord fits into a chord progression. So 6th chord is preceded by 1, 3, or 5, and then followed usually by a 2, 4, or 5. So these 3 examples I have here have this progression in mind. So starting with what's preceded by a 6th chord. So a 1 can precede a 6th chord, or a 3 can precede a 6th chord, or a 5 can precede a 6th chord. As far as following it, after the 6th chord, it can be a 2 or a 4 or a 5 chord. Okay, so let's look at our first example here. This is a measure 1 and 2 is a 1 to 6, 2, 6 to 5. Let's hear that. Let's see what that sounds like. Okay, good. So notice the doubling, the preference of doubling for the 6th chord. Generally speaking, you want to double the function. So because the 6th chord functions as a tonic, then you'll probably try, in this F major example, you want to double the F. So therefore, I did not double it here, but I did on the next one. And so therefore, the first preference is doubling the 3rd of the chord. If not, then you can double the root, and then the 5th in that order. It's the same as the 2 chords. Okay, next example. I'm looking at F minor, and so it's a 1 chord, 3. Generally speaking, let's go back here, in F major, in major keys, the 6 is a minor quality chord. In a minor key, the 6 is a major quality chord. Okay, let's listen to this. Okay, and then in the 3rd example, the deceptive cadence is a 5 to 1. Now notice how we've talked about how 5 can go to 1 or 5 can go to a 4 first inversion. Well, here is the other reason. It's this root movement going from the 5th scale degree to the 6th scale degree. So let's play this and see what it sounds like. And usually that's not how a piece of music ends. It would be this deceptive cadence, and then it would go on to finish with a 5 to 1. Now, if we listen to this, let's see what that sounds like if I were to change it to a 1 chord. So in the key of F, let's take this down to an F. So this would be F, F, A chord. So this would be, our 3rd hack, right? Which is triple the root on the last chord. Let's listen to that and see what this sounds like. This is a 1 chord, so 5 to 1. Notice how in the key of F, the leading tone is E, resolving to tonic, and the chord 7th is falling. Okay, so the tritone is resolving properly, and the only difference is that the root movement from the bass, from the 5 to the 1, or in our example, 5 to 6. So again, let's listen to it as a 5 to 1, and then I'll move this back up to a D, and you'll hear it that way. So here is 5 to 1. Okay, and then now let's listen to this as a 5 to 6. So it feels less finished. It's not as complete. Okay, now let's move on to the 3 chords. So 3 chords, these are a little bit different. 3 chords fit really well into sequences, and a lot of times they go from 3 to 7. But we'll deal with this later. We haven't talked about 7 chords yet, and we haven't dealt with sequences yet. So that's going to come up in a later chapter. Okay, so 3 chords, they don't fit into the same function as the 1, 4, 5. They are kind of on their own. And so generally when you see me draw my houses, 1 chords with their 6 substitution, 4 chords with their 2, 5 chords and 7 are dominant. And so therefore that leaves the 3 chord out. And I kind of squeeze it in between the 1 and the 4 house. But generally 3 chords are more about these progressions. So if we look at if we look at our measure 7 and 8 example, look at the soprano line. And this is an 8 with a like a hat on top, or a circumflex, or whatever you want to call it, that accent, but it's basically a scale degree. So look at the falling stepwise scale degree, 8 down to 3, and how that interacts with this chord progression. Okay, let's listen to it. Okay, good. And let's look at the progressions. So therefore, a 3 chord is preceded by 1 or 6. So in this example, the 3 chords preceded by 1. And in this example, 3 chords preceded by 6. And then it's followed by a 4 or 6. So after the 3 chord, it goes to 6. Or after this 3 chord, it goes to 4. So these are your examples, generally speaking, as far as within progressions. Again, not observing sequences or how 7 chords interact with 3s also. The last thing I want to talk about is the doubling preferences for a 3 chord. 3 chords, generally, you treat them as chords. So root first, and then 5th is preference, and then 3rd. And generally, that's how that works. The 3 chords and the 6 chords, actually, are filler chords in these root positions. But if you put them into first inversion, so 3-6 or 6-6, they're much less stable, and you don't always see them, or you don't frequently see them in those inversions. Okay, let's listen to the second example here. Measure 9. Notice again how the scale degrees are descending by step, and how the 3 and the 6 chords just kind of fit in to the mix here. Here we go. And yes, that's the Pachelbel canon chord progression. Okay, so basically chapter 13 is pretty straightforward. So therefore, these are filler chords. All these doubling preferences, what matters the most is the line. Look at your musical line and write good voice leading. That's what matters most.